has a,
I
yeah.
would like to know what is your next meet in Indian International?
In September, the Puyallup tribe always has a powwow down at in their tribal grounds down by the casino. So that'll be the next big
September and
thing.
July?
Yeah. They just had one over the weekend in Portland. And so I didn't go down to that one because I was actually back home in Idaho. I had a group of 15 youth that I took back there to work on the reservation itself. They painted a church building that my grandmother was a founding member of, and they painted an elder's house. So they were very busy in 100+ heat.
I recently read on the internet that the Washington State History Museum, they have their first Thursday, or the third Thursday of every month is free admission, and that they were going to have Native American arts and crafts this week.
That was my understanding. The
Okay.
last thing I saw from their site, yes.
On August 8th, I guess, it's a Saturday, there's a free kind of a celebration
Yeah, that's what I
festival
read.
thing. And it's from noon to 7, and they have all kinds of activities and
So that's
things.
August 8th.
August 8th is a
It's not
Saturday.
this week.
I looked it up yesterday and I
Okay.
couldn't find it.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it's August
so-
8th.
And they always have a very good Native American display down there. So even if you don't go down on that time, you can go down anytime and see that.
So August 8th is towards the end of the quarter, but any of the Washington State History Museum, my Washington State History students who go down to the museum in Tacoma and take advantage of that, I'll give you extra credit. Towards the end of the quarter, you might need that extra credit.
I will.
Okay. Anybody else? Basic question? Okay. Yes.
Which is your religion in Native American culture?
Okay. So my name is Kim Randall. Originally it was Kim Henry. And my affiliation with Native tribes are 3. Omaha, Nez Perce, and Menominee. So the Menominee are from Wisconsin, the Omaha are from Nebraska, and the Nez Perce are from Idaho, Oregon, Washington, in the Wallowa Valley area. Okay? I bet you want to know how that works, right? Okay, so my great-grandmother, who's in this picture here, she was Menominee from Wisconsin. Her family migrated to the Lewiston, Lapwai area, and she met my great-grandfather, who is full-blooded Nez Perce. She is half Menominee. Actually, she's full Menominee, but from 2 different tribes within, 2 different tribal groups within the Menominee Nation, which meant that my grandfather was half Nez Perce, half Menominee. And my father, and my grandmother, my father's mother, was half Omaha. Her father was a French-Canadian trader who didn't stay around very long, but he contributed. So for that I appreciate. But I don't know much about him. We've tracked him into the mid-1870s, and from there he kind of disappears. So we don't know if there was a death or he went back to Canada. We don't know. My grandmother passed away 2 years ago, and she is the woman in this picture with my youngest daughter. My youngest, who is now 11. We have a middle son that is 18, and this is him in the cradle board on the table, which is this white cradle board here. And I will pass this around because you will be very impressed that this old lady used to dance with this cradle board and that baby. So it is, and this is my father. My father is my father and his siblings are the last generation that will ever be able to register any native blood.
Wow.
Because of the BIA and the government's attempt to wipe out the Native Americans, they figured the easiest way to do that was to limit their blood quantum and to kill off the buffalo. So if they killed off their food source and they limited the amount of blood that was required to register, they figured that they could kill out the native culture. Yes?
But really, how could they do that? Because it's always in your culture. I mean,
That's the white man's way of thinking.
well, they were
And actually it came through President Jackson. He was famous for that enactment in his presidency. And so when the BIA was formed, they determined that your blood quantum had to be a certain amount. For the Nez Perce Nation and the Omaha Nation, it is a quarter. And the government in 1954 decided that they no longer needed the Menominee tribe. So they disillusioned them and they became American and essentially took away their culture. From 1954 to 1974, they fought in Congress to get their tribal affiliation returned to them. And in 1974, they were successful in doing that. So they have been returned to
This
them.
is your grandma in this picture?
No, that's me.
Oh, it's you?
With my son.
Sexy
Yeah.
lady.
So they, my husband thinks so. So they, in that process, returned back to the reservation in Wisconsin, and they have since begun to teach their children again the Menominee language and how they survived. My grandmother, who is pictured with my youngest daughter, the smaller photo, she was raised in a boarding school that I'm sure that you've all heard that white people felt that if the Indian learned the white man's ways, they would assimilate better into the culture of the white man, which led to an era of kids who were not taught their own language, who were taught not to tell stories about their culture or about their people, and their hair was cut. For a man, that is a very devastating thing because his hair length works in relationship with his honor and his standing within the tribe. So they taught a generation of children to dislike being an Indian. Everything that they taught them was to assimilate them into the white culture. Therefore, my father's generation, until within the last 6 years, I knew more about my native culture than my father did. And my father is just turned 68. So for most of his life, he was taught that it wasn't good to be an Indian. So therefore, he was not taught how to bead. He was not taught how to speak his own language, except for a few words that my grandmother taught him. They were taught that that wasn't the proper thing. That was uncool. It wasn't the way to be. I have lived most of my almost 50 years off of the reservation. My dad followed construction, and so when he had a job, we picked up and we left the reservation and went to wherever his job was. We were there anywhere between 6 months to a year, and then we would pick up and move on to the next job. And if there wasn't a next job, we returned back to the reservation where he worked with my grandfather in his mechanic business, and he owned a gas station, and so my father managed that for him when we were on the reservation. And that would last anywhere between 6 months and a year. So we traveled a lot. I'm a very good packer, and I can pack like Tetris. So, because if you didn't get it in the box and you didn't get it in the truck, it didn't go. And that's just the way my dad was. So, and still is to this day. So, from those three, I have to tell you that most of my culture learning is from the Nez Perce, because that's the reservation that we always went back to. That's where my grandparents were. That's where my great-grandparents were. As part of the culture, they all lived communally. I had 14 aunts and uncles, and my grandmother lost a set of twins about 2 months after they were born. So there would have been 16. One of them was not born into our family. One of them, my grandfather promptly took from her parents because she was 2 years old, sitting in a high chair all day long while her parents sat in the bar and drank, being taken care of by her 5-year-old sibling and her 2-year-old little brother. So, she was 2, he was 3. So these 3 children spent their entire day by themselves while their parents sat in a bar drinking. My grandfather knew that because my grandfather had a stool with his name on it right next to them. So, which is very prevalent in Native culture, that they are alcoholic or they have a drug addiction of some kind. Yes?
Yeah, I was about, when you're talking about that, they did a study on, because of how much we actually drink, we're not prone to becoming alcoholics because it's been in our religion for freaking ever, to where the Indians didn't get it till the 1800s. So that's why they're so prone to become alcoholics, because it's not in their blood.
And once it's there, it's very true. It's generational.
Yep.
And it's very genetic. And if you are not aware of that, you are very easily fall into that trap. And so he saw her parents at the bar, went over to the house. He took her from the high chair, took her to my grandmother, and said, "She's ours now, so you take care of her," along with the 13 other ones that are running around. And this is a child at 2 years, never spoke a word, couldn't feed herself, was still in diapers, and couldn't walk. Within 2 weeks of being in a home where the children were loved and the children cared for one another, there were stable parents and stable grandparents, she was walking, talking, and running with the rest of them, and potty trained. So, and forever, from that point on, was considered a Henry, and the parents never fought it. So, I have to tell you that that story repeats itself to this day on the reservation, day in and day out. The church we were just at a week ago in Idaho, that pastor feeds anywhere between 25 and 40 kids a day, all day long, because parents don't care where they are or shove them out the door and say, "Go play. I'm tired of you being here, go play." So, your children and my children grew up in a very different society than that. These children are very starved for attention. Our oldest was 18, our youngest child with us was 14, and they became instantaneous parents of these kids in and out of the church all day long. So they are starved for attention. They need that attention. They want that attention. Unlike most of your cultures, where you take care of your children and you nurture them, you pass on your culture to them, these kids, some do, some don't. Okay, there are families, like my family, that is very strong and very interwoven. All my aunts and uncles live on the reservation within 2 to 3 blocks of one another. My grandparents lived on the reservation